ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick from CWE, and I run ResearchFantasy.com. Check us out over there. We are changing the way the site looks and the way we are basically operating. Instead of bringing you content that I write, I'm just going to really be curating a lot of content of people who I consider to be pretty intelligent, probably better than me, and really sending you out there to kind of look at what they have. I think that's a great way to do it. You never know enough when it comes to playing fantasy. So check out as we kind of change things around over there. Our site is going to stay the same visually, but we're just going to be adding a few little tweaks and turns here and there to really give you the best user experience possible. This is my second attempt at recording this. I realized in the first attempt that I had not plugged in my microphone. And apparently when my computer heard me say I didn't plug in my microphone, they decided not to save the video either, so that's gone. So now here we are with a second attempt at this. That's fine. That just means I know what I want to say, and I'm going to say it. As a disclaimer, and I don't know if I'm going to do this every time, but I think I want to here since we're kind of getting back into the swing of things. Everything we bring you here has been, statistically researched. Yeah, that light's going to have to stay on. It's been statistically researched and all that. But that's going to not always work out. So I think what people have to realize when they watch videos like this, and we get it all the time, and I feel it. I know I've read articles from people who I consider smarter than me. They bring up a good point about somebody. I play them. They stink. And I immediately want to find the person and rip their heads off. And it's happened to me plenty of times. I get emails, comments on here, comments on Research Fantasy, comments on Twitter. A couple of people sent snail mail. One guy sent a punching telegram. People tell me, Nick, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. I listened to you and I played this guy and he really screwed up my lineups. Thanks for losing me money, dick. People just have to understand that we put a lot of time and effort to researching things that we do. And when I say we, I'm speaking kind of in general for most people who do daily fantasy content and season-long content. People look at stats. People look at trends. People don't just pull this stuff out of their ass and decide that this is the way we're going to do it. So you just have to be mindful of it. And ultimately in fantasy and betting and whatever you want to do, because let's face it, daily fantasy is gambling. You can't control the outcome. You can't control Kevin Love getting hurt, Eric Gordon getting hurt. You can't control those things. Draftkings and FanDuel have become culpable in this by basically saying we're not going to let you switch players out. So when Karis LeVert or J.J. Barea or Jimmy Butler or any number of guys who have already gotten injured or not played decidedly pre-game, they're not going to let you switch it out. So they're basically telling you you're going to have to just take your best guess, hope that it's right, and it's going to have to be that way. So just be a little bit mindful. We can't control what people do on the court. All right, preamble done. Let's move on to the Waste Management Phoenix Open taking place at TPC Scottsdale. A lot of people didn't really like playing here because it's a big party atmosphere. This is a stacked field. I mean, you've got pretty much all the big players minus Day. I'm sure I'm for Dustin Johnson isn't here. But still, Spieth, Justin Thomas, you've got Hideki, John Rahm. You've got a sizable amount of people here that are some big names. Happy to be done with these joke courses where we're playing 3 different courses and having a Saturday cut, or we're playing 2 courses, but one of them only gets played one day, and then 3 of them one gets played 3. Just happy to be back on one course where we could just look at a very good sample size. This course has been around for a long time. I believe it was 87 since this tournament's been played here. Looking specifically at course history, I feel that that's very important. I don't think you see too many wild fluctuations with most golfers here. Recent form to a certain extent where it makes sense, and that is being done on a golfer-by-golfer basis as opposed to just generally looking at the field in that perspective. And we're looking at 6 stats. We always look at 6 stats. The 2 most valuable, I think, this weekend are tee to green, which is our staple stat every week, and greens in regulation. We're also looking at bogey avoidance, par 4 scoring, proximity to the hole, and strokes gained approach. Those 4 are kind of weighted a little lower than the other 2 because the other 2 really pop as being very strong indicators of success. And this is exactly what I mean. We're looking at this. We're looking at past performance. If a guy sets up well, and he's had good past performance, and he's been good here recently, and he doesn't make the cut, what do you expect from us? We're not magicians. We can't just guess that somebody's not going to make the cut who we thought was going to. We had an event last year, I believe, where all of the 10K plus golfers missed the cut. I specifically remember Rahm and DJ, and I think maybe Rahm made it, but he finished like high 70s or just at 70. It was one of those situations where it was 80 golfers made the cut and whatever. I want to kind of look at this from this perspective through the lens of what our model puts out. And I want to discuss our first and third golfer at the same time, and that's Jordan Spieth at number 1, Hideki Matsuyama at number 2. Hideki gets the favor here because of his just really impressive course history. Recent play has been decent, but not like immensely spectacular. The stats here put him as a top 8-ish overall golfer. But the separation between he and Spieth in terms of an average from our model is actually pretty significant. So the outcomes range an average anywhere from 8.75 to like 110. Hideki is 15.53. Number 2 is 14.65, and Spieth is 8.75. So the argument could be made here that Spieth is actually over and above the odds-on favorite to win. And the reason I say that, yes, he and Hideki are tied in most Vegas odds sites, but I've heard more than one person, and actually almost all analysts who have some kind of a model seem to be spitting out the fact that Spieth is landing number 1. He's top 12 in 5 of the 6 core stats, 4th in this field in strokes gained off the tee, 1st in greens in regulation, 1st in par 4 scoring, 6th in bogey avoidance. So like there's just a lot to like about Spieth, whereas Hideki is top 32 and only has 1 top 10, which is an 8th in strokes gained approach. His putter was on fire, but that actually is why he does well at this course, is because this is not a course where putters really have to be on fire for somebody to win. The guys who don't putt well can definitely gain strokes on the field at this course. So initially my response to that was that when I was going to come on and do this video, I was basically going to say, okay, strategy is Hideki and cash, Spieth and tournaments, because I really thought that Hideki was going to be just 15% higher than the next highest big dollar golfer, because I mean it's really hard to ignore win, second, fourth. Like, let's just face it, it's really tough to not look past that. But from a lot of what I see around the industry, it seems as if that ownership gap is going to be more narrow than that. If that's the case, I'm almost like shifting Spieth into the cash game conversation, and I'd rather look at someone like a Fowler or a Rahm, who will almost certainly have lower ownership than both of those guys, still really possess all the tools that can get the job done. I think a lot of people will be off Fowler because he missed the cut last week, and it really is hard to get back on a golfer that costs that much the week after, but he's done this now 2 straight years where he's had top 4s after missing the cut, so he can bounce back just fine. Again, I'm probably going to be higher on Hideki than I am Spieth in cash games. I still will probably go overweight on Spieth in tournaments just because my gut reaction is that he is going to win this one. And Hideki might be a top 5, and that's fine. And I don't think you're not going to beat the ownership on either of those players unless either or both finish below 20. If that happens and you went with Fowler and he finishes top 3, you're going to be in a beautiful position. Next favorite golfer, number 2, Zach Johnson. Very cheap, $7,700 on DraftKings. Last 3 trips here, we've got a 12, 14, and 10. Fits in really well with the stats. I mean, he's basically top 33 everything with 3 top 10s. And he's been playing much, much better than we've seen out of him really for the past couple of years. So being somewhat of a course horse with the stats that kind of back it up, at least the ones I'm looking at in recent form, at that price, he's basically like the number 2 guy that I'm putting into my cash game lineups. and saying this is where I want to build at. I'm not going to go to who finishes 4. We'll talk about some of the other options in a second, but the next guy who really catches my eye, well, actually, let's kind of just work down the list. We'll kind of try to get 5 minutes worth of just working down the list. Leishman and Berger, I expect to be popular. Noren is kind of a question mark. I think a lot of people will see that price tag and kind of lose their stuff because that's a huge jump from last week, but he's got to have all the confidence in the world moving into this. I like him. I think I will have a lot of Matsuyama and Spieth plus Noren builds. Not all 3 of them, but like 2 of those. One of those top guys and Noren together. Webb Simpson profiles to be very, very highly owned. I just can't buy him winning, and that is going to influence my decision to use him. Benny Han was the winner. He was the leader after 3 rounds here last year. Only time he's been here in the last 5 years. Finished 6th. Course stats don't look great right now, and I'm really hesitant to jump on a guy who's only had 1 performance. If he was like 7K, I do think I could probably argue with using him, and he really has been a mostly stable golfer, so I don't hate it, but I'd be leery of putting him in your cash games, especially when you have guys like Ryan Palmer, who's riding high, having a much better year than last year. Brendan Steele doing very well. I think Patrick Reed may be a guy who doesn't see a ton of ownership but has talent. Scott Piercy turns up 17th in our module. I think he's an interesting play this weekend. JJ Spawn, another one of those guys who only has 1 appearance here. It was a 4th place finish, but he's been so good all year that it's really hard to look past using him. Ches Reavie shows up really high. I will have no Ches Reavie. I don't care how. He actually probably has the best pure stats. In fact, he is top 13 in all 6 of our stats. So he is the best statistical fit for this course, who has 3 missed cuts in his last 3 attempts, and it's in his last 5 years. So very, very, very risky, but I'm just not. I'm looking at him kind of as like my Ricky Fowler part due. I was really high on Ricky last week. That burnt me very badly. I'm not letting it happen again this week. I think guys like Molinari are viable. Luke List could be popular because of the bomber theology here, but he's been absolutely awful. Jason Kokrak is interesting, not only because he's very close to where I live in Youngstown. He's from Warren, Howland area. But even though he's missed a cut twice here and 3 times in his last 5, this actually fits him well, and I think he's been playing a lot better this year than in years past, so I don't mind him. Missed Emiliano Grillo. I don't mind him either. I think he's a nice fit. Brian Stords, 16th, 10th, 53 in his last 3, 7K, pretty tempting price, willing to give him some looks. Grayson Murray, been golfing fairly well, willing to buy in on him. Kevin Na is probably the one course horse that there's no way in hell I'm touching. Just does not look right altogether. I mean, it's tough. Someone at 69 that has a 16th, 24th, 26th, 19th in his last 4, 36 before that. Any of those things would be good finishes. I just can't bring myself to buying into Kevin Na. One guy I will be buying into, and I will be buying into very heavily, is Dirt McGirt, 6,900. Hasn't finished worse than 32nd, and his course stats actually line up very well here this year. And that's mostly why I'm off of Nas, because he's been kind of a disaster. He's been good in proximity. He's been pretty solid at tee to green. But everything else in between there, he's just been really, really volatile. Greens regulation, bogey avoidance, par 4 just not good. Whereas McGirt, he kind of profiles as a top 50 in all our categories. 9th in bogey avoidance, 9th in greens and regulation, 4th in bogey avoidance in the field. Going to be someone I use heavily because he's a great salary saver. I think you'll see a lot of people on Brandon Harkins because of his recent performance. I don't love him. I don't hate him, but I'm going to work my hardest to kind of go underweight on him. Then you've got guys like Martin Laird and Billy Horschel. It's really hard for me to kind of take a firm stance on either one of them because both of these guys burn me on a regular basis. I think that they're worth flyers in tournaments because it's a low price, and if one of them pops off, and Martin Laird has popped off for 2 top 10s in the last 4 years, Billy Horschel has been top 25 in his last 2 and does have an 11th in 2013. So it's more than possible, and Horschel especially is very streaky. He's on the better end of streakiness right now. He's the kind of guy who just pops off and wins a tournament kind of out of nowhere. I'm not saying this could be it, but this could be it. So that'll kind of wrap it up today. Going to be interesting. I'm going to toy around with some Matsuyama Spieth cash game builds and just see if I could find enough value that I really don't want to throw up with, while trying to keep Zach Johnson in the lineup as well, because I think those can be 3 top 9 finishes. Any comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to say, leave them in the comment box. Make sure to check out researchfantasy.com, and we'll check you out again next week.